that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready for another Energy Week show with George Harvey and Tom Fennell, the very famous world traveler, Tom Fennell, philosopher, engineer. I'm an engineer too.
Yeah.
I'm just a different kind of engineer. I'm a computer engineer. Anyway, every day I get up early and I look at the news for energy and climate change, and I've been doing this, by the way, for over 6 years. And for over 5 of those 6 years, I've been putting up the information at my blog, geoharvey.com. And you can go to the blog and click on the entries that we relate. We will try to keep you updated as we go through the show on the dates in which these entries were posted at the blog. They're not the same dates that they went up online. But they are, I get up usually around 4 o'clock, and this is about 5 hours a day. You know, I can
believe that.
Yeah, I actually calculated how much money I've got in donations. It comes to about 8 cents per hour. Anyway, I'm not doing this for money.
The IRS is going to be on your back.
Oh man, I'm not doing this for money, obviously. As anybody who knows what kind of car I drive. It's called a virtual car. It's the car of my imagination. Okay. Our first, should we just start? We're starting with July 6th.
I just was going to mention
that, yes, of course.
Some of these things are really in depth.
Yeah.
And we don't have time to talk about the depth.
Absolutely.
If I can remember it, I'll try and call your attention to them, because some of them are really interesting and some of them are really informative.
Some of them are fun.
Yeah.
Some of them are not so much fun. Okay. Our first item, we're going back to the 6th of July. Today, by the way, is the 13th of July, which is a Thursday, and we do this show on Thursday morning. So we're starting a week earlier on the 6th of July. That's a nice picture. This is from Renews. Renews almost always has nice pictures, and they're almost always pretty generic. And the articles are very short.
Yeah, I noticed some of these are. Right?
Yeah. So you have a title on this one?
Yeah, I do. Renewables, I can't even say it. Renewables will be the lowest cost power by 2030.
This is disappointing to me. I think it already is.
It's going to be quicker than 2030.
Yeah, much. Renewable and solar electricity will be the cheapest source of power generation in every G20 country. Now this tells you something, by the way. This is every place it will be the cheapest.
In the G20.
In the G20. It's already the cheapest in some. According to a report commissioned by Greenpeace Germany, it also said that in about half of the G20 countries, renewables have produced electricity at rates equal to or lower than those of coal and nuclear since 2012. I'm sorry, 2015. Happening. It's already happening. And in fact, in the United States, we're already seeing the prices of electricity from solar plus batteries or wind plus batteries dropping below those of combined cycle natural gas, which is the lowest new natural gas price. Mm-hmm. So that's, why...
So economics will rule.
Yeah.
In the long term.
Do we talk about Rick Perry's quote this time?
I'm not sure.
Well, Rick Perry came up with a thing saying it's a law of supply and demand, basically. If you have the supply, people will demand it.
Okay.
I'm misquoting him badly, but that's the sense, and everybody's been making fun of him ever since.
Quick takeaway from this one. I forgot, it's a quote, and I forgot who quoted it, but there can be no excuses anymore. Climate protection increasingly makes economic sense across the G20 as renewable energy becomes cheaper than coal and nuclear.
Yep.
And it's happening.
It is happening, yep. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Our next one is from Clean Technica.
Big Autos, fully electric car sales up 102% in the USA.
That's kind of a good growth.
That's double.
Yeah, if you do that every year for, some certain number of years, you have more electric cars than you have weight of the rest of the planet. For automakers who report the monthly sales in the United States of their plug-in models, and that does not include Tesla, by the way, because Tesla
Tesla's not included in this.
not in the list. Fully electric cars in June of 2017 were up 102% from June of 2016, and plug-in hybrid sales were up 11.5%. For the year through June, fully electric sales were up 96%, and plug-in hybrids were up 42%. And you know, one of the things that I find interesting about this is that it's happening with gas prices low.
That's an interesting juxtaposition here,
Isn't it?
that shouldn't be happening.
Well, it should be happening, but you know, if you had said to me that that was happening, I think I would have said, "What? What?"
Well, there's a quick takeaway here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem. The problem for large automakers is that they will crush their own finances and have to write off massive investments if they rapidly shift to electric transport.
Right.
But they're exposing themselves to great threat if they are too slow electrifying their offerings.
This is a tough little
the decision they got to make.
tightrope they're walking on. Yes, indeed.
And we're seeing more and more of these companies moving closer and closer to electric.
Right.
What this article said, and I didn't copy it, about Volvo.
Yes,
They're going all electric.
they're
I
going
think.
all electric. Yeah, they have announced that.
Tesla, GM, Nissan is getting strong in the electric business.
Yep,
It's the future, guys. You know.
that's the future. That's right. And they're going to have to move. I mean, the idea that we're going to make America great again by resurrecting coal and protecting oil and natural gas is kind of like, we're going to make America great again by protecting manual typewriters, mechanical adding machines, and slide rules. And you know, the computer, the first PCs were introduced in 1978. Nobody knew how to run them.
Yeah.
And the IBM PC, as I recall, came out in 1982. It might have been late 1981, but it was it was about that time. And within a couple of years, you couldn't find anybody who was selling a slide rule or a mechanical adding machine.
Rule?
Yeah, mechanical adding machine, manual typewriter. Forget it. You know.
Well, I always think about this article that was written about an engineer working out his calculations with a sly drool.
Well, you know, in about 1982, 1983, I read an article in Byte magazine, which used to be published in Peterborough, New Hampshire, and it was one of the most influential
I remember that.
magazines.
It's not in existence anymore?
No.
Yeah.
It was one of the most influential computer magazines in the world. But there was an article in it that said if the price of air transportation had gone the same direction in term, and if the efficiency and if the cost, the speed and so forth as computers had in the last 10 years, it would be possible to buy a Boeing 747 for $8, fly it around the world twice in half an hour on half a gallon of gasoline. And that was said not very long after I bought my first personal computer, which had 16 kilobytes of RAM and no disk storage at all.
I had one.
It was tape going in. It had only the advantage of having a screen and a keyboard, which the first computer I worked with had neither of.
Yeah.
You know, but the world has changed so much since then, and we're still at that position, you know, where things are really just beginning to change. And, you know, in 1983, 1984, people knew that the computers were the wave of the future, but they didn't exactly know what they were going to do with them. And now I think that's where we are with renewable energy. And the changeover, I think, will be as fast as it was with computers.
It's certainly going to be faster than a lot of people in the business want it to be.
Actually, we have an article about that this week. Okay, so should we move on?
Yeah, we got an image here.
Our next,
I think we got an image.
our next article is from the San Francisco Chronicle.
That's the one, yep. And
That's the one.
And here is the image.
A pump jack, also known as a nodding donkey. Isn't that a great term? Okay.
I never heard it called that, but you take something like Amtrak and you drive through, where you ride through Ohio, they got these things everywhere, just going up and down.
Yeah, up and down. And I've known people who said you go through Oklahoma and Texas, and it used to be nodding donkeys, and now it's wind turbines.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Anyway, what do you got for a title for this?
The courts forced Trump's hand on Obama-era rules.
A federal court has ruled that the EPA cannot suspend a methane emissions rule crafted by the Obama administration. Under EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, the EPA argued that oil and gas industry has not been allowed to comment on rules. An appeals court in Washington, D.C. rejected that claim in a 2-to-1 ruling. And you know, one comment I've got about this, I'm worried about the EPA. A lot of people are worried about the EPA.
The new EPA.
We have, at the place where I live, a beautiful garden with lots of flowers.
Yeah.
We have a fairly substantial stand of milkweed.
Okay.
I have not seen a single monarch butterfly all year.
That's disturbing.
And I have not seen a single honeybee.
That's disturbing too. That's very strange because I see them every day.
Yeah, this is a serious problem. And those honeybees, you know, if you think about it, Monsanto is selling Roundup, which is blamed for killing the honeybees.
Actually, I'm seeing bumblebees, not honeybees.
I'm seeing bumblebees, a couple of them, not very many. But the honeybees, I haven't seen any. Tori told me that she saw one yesterday. She may have seen two, but it might have been the same one. And she was very excited about that. But you know, these honeybees are needed for agriculture, and Monsanto is killing agriculture. What sense does that make? How long is that going to go on?
Well, it'll stop when Monsanto owns all the farms.
Or it'll stop when the people running Monsanto go do something smarter. Okay.
Well, what's going on here is the Trump administration is attempting to place a 2-year stay on the rules.
Yeah.
They're using compliance delays as a strategy to avoid enforcing regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's their game.
Yep.
And among the rules that's delayed include limits on the amount of toxic discharge power plants are allowed to release into public waterways. Limits? Why don't they just say you can't do it?
Well, you know, and there's something here that I think needs to be said, and that is if you go to the just as an example, if you go to the Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and you look for, you can find there a chart that shows if you're a pregnant woman or a child, how much fish of what species you can eat from what water safely. There's another set of data for people who are other than pregnant women and children. And that information has to do with the mercury contamination in the water, all of which, or almost all of which, came from coal.
Yeah.
Now, that contamination, we have no technology that can remove it on a practical basis. So what they're doing is, among other things, they are dumping pollutants that we cannot recover from, that are having health effects. And they're allowed to do this? Really?
It's called privatizing the profits and socializing the risks.
Yes, it's socialism. Blame the socialists. I used to have a policy I used to call blame Bill. All right. If anything had anything, whatever, to do with a computer and it went wrong, didn't matter what kind of computer it was, didn't matter what the operating system was, didn't matter what the application was. If it was happening on a mainframe that was built in China with a Chinese operating system, blame Bill Gates. If it had to do with anything else, blame Bill Clinton.
This is the blame Bill.
Blame Bill, huh?
I've changed it. It's now blame Donnie.
Blame Donnie.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, moving along here.
Yes.
Cheap wind and solar mean the U.S. will beat Paris targets despite Trump.
Is this the Morgan Stanley thing from
No, this is
Renew Economy?
Yeah.
I've got it. Okay. This is from Friday. July 7th. As I said, it was from Renew Economy.
Yeah, okay, that's Morgan Stanley.
Yeah. A report from Morgan Stanley predicts, quote, surprisingly large, end quote, reductions in global power sector emissions, even in Trump's America, as solar and wind energy hurtle toward being the cheapest new sources of electric generation. With or without ambitious policy targets, the power industry will be steered by economics.
I've said that same thing in my own words many times. Economics will win.
That's right.
It's going to dominate.
It's going to dominate. And the people who are trying to stop this or move against it, you know, they've got a the Koch brothers, and this happens later in the show's stuff,
yeah, we got
are putting a lot of effort into stopping rooftop solar power from going up because it makes power more expensive for everybody else.
They're being somewhat successful.
They're being successful, although
it isn't going to last.
Not only that, but the stuff they're complaining about is fictional.
Yeah.
You know.
Who cares?
Oh well. Anyway, that was from Morgan Stanley. Do you have anything else on that, Tom?
Well, this again is the same sentence in a different wording. The power industry will be steered by economics to one degree or another.
Yeah.
With those forward-looking businesses faring the best.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Well, this is interesting. Yeah, we got a nice picture here.
We have a picture here, and it's not as bad as a picture could have been, all things considered. This comes from the BBC.
Tesla to build the world's largest lithium-ion battery in Australia.
Yeah, and
we'll see a picture of the world's second biggest. A little bit later, it's in California.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the second biggest or not, but it's big.
It's big. I was surprised. I thought, what? I didn't know about that. And then, of course, I realized I did. Anyway, an Australian state will install the world's largest lithium-ion battery in a historic deal with electric car firm Tesla and energy company Neoen. Tesla's boss, Elon Musk, confirms a promise that Tesla will build the battery within 100 days or it will be provided for free.
He shot his mouth off that time, didn't he?
Huh?
He shot his mouth off, but he's going to have to back it up.
He's going to have to back it up or he's going to have to answer to a bunch of very angry stockholders. The 100 megawatt, 129 megawatt hour battery will be ready this year. And this is...
I'm going to put the picture up, by the way. That happens to be South Australia where they're going to do all of this.
They're good. And the reason why it's happening in South Australia was because they had a storm that brought down all the electricity in the entire state.
Oh, we've talked about that.
We've talked about it many times.
The wind blew all the towers over.
Yeah, and the people, anti-renewable people in the federal government in Australia, and within all of the states said, you see, that's what happens when you put too much renewable power on the grid. But unfortunately, it wasn't the renewable power that caused the problem. And
no, they blamed it on it, but it wasn't.
They blamed it, but you know, if you look at
we saw the pictures. It was the wind knocked the towers down.
The towers were down, and the coal burning power plants.
There was no grid.
There was no grid. Yeah. Okay.
Let's move into California.
California. This is from the New York Times.
California, here we come.
Yeah, there you go.
Jerry Brown announces a climate summit meeting in California. What's going on here?
Speaking by video conference to the Global Citizens Festival in Hamburg, here we come, California, Governor Jerry Brown reinforced his reputation as America's de facto leader in climate change, announcing to cheering crowds that his state would gather leaders from around the world for a global warming summit next year.
Well, I think this is Brown's last term in office, and I think he's going down with a bang. I mean, this is what he said. He says, he's quoting now, or I'm quoting him, the president doesn't speak for the rest of America in pulling out of the Paris Agreement.
That's absolutely right.
This is damn serious, and most people are taking it far too lightly. And that's also
I
true.
think that is true, and I think there's a lot of people, there's a lot of people who are denying that climate change is happening.
Well, I'm just going to comment on that because this article has a map of the United States. Mm-hmm. And if you eliminate New York, New Jersey, and New England, and you eliminate the far west from New Mexico to Montana, you got a great big part of America, which is about 2/3 of all of America. And in that area there, the population denies climate change.
A large number of people.
Well, the majority of
Yeah,
the population.
yeah.
That's scary.
It is scary, and the thing that's even more scary is the amount of money that we're already losing to because of climate change goes into scores of billions of dollars every year. And people are just unaware of this because it doesn't happen at a level where the federal government is saying we need $100 billion to cover this. It's happening at a level where individual people are getting hurt. And I mean, you know, if you look at St. Helena Parish in New Orleans, that storm they had last summer, the no-name rainstorm, damaged almost all of the homes in that parish.
Well, we've talked about that. We've seen pictures of the town.
Right, and the parish is a county-sized area. When they say parish,
that's a county.
Yeah, it's a county.
That's what they call a county in
Louisiana.
I mean,
and only 1% of those houses had flood insurance.
Yeah.
But our flood insurance premiums, where you would have expected from 1978 to 2014, they would have gone up with inflation and increased population.
Have, but not much. Not as much as maybe they should have.
Well, you would have expected them to go up by a factor of about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
They went up by a factor of 43.
Wow.
And the reason for the difference is
they
because
did go up.
Yeah, bigger storms, more costly storms. And it's been getting worse at a rate of about $500 million to $1 billion a year. And the $3.5 billion that we are now spending on insurance, which should have been $500 million, represents only about 10% of the properties, possibly more. But the figures I've been seeing are 10 to 20%. So we're losing somewhere between $15 and $30 billion a year to climate change already, just in flood insurance payouts and flood damage. And that doesn't include...
We've talked about the medical aspect.
Mitigation that's been going on in Miami. They're spending $500 million just raising the roads. I mean, it's crazy. And people are saying, no, this isn't happening. It isn't happening. Or they're saying it isn't happening because of human beings. Well, it was predicted in 1896 that this was going to happen because of carbon dioxide going into the air. What do they want? The answer to that is it is impossible to meet their standards, and the damage that's being done, they want us to ignore.
Yeah.
And why would they do that? Well, one reason might be because it's good for the bottom line for a couple of companies.
Well, I think that's the major reason.
That's the only reason I really can.
And the problem with the population as a whole is it's happening so slowly that nobody's really getting excited about it.
It's the frog in the water that's being heated up.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
We should get on.
Yeah, let's move into Paris.
Paris.
France announces plan to ban all petrol and diesel vehicles by 2040.
How are you going to make money in this market?
Got a picture coming up.
We do.
Here. Yeah.
Cars in Paris. How are you going to make money in this market? You know, I mean, really, if you hold out against this kind of activity, you're going to go broke. This is from Saturday, September 8th. If you want to find this, go to geoharvey.com and click on July 8th. Sorry, I think did I say July?
Well, you just said it.
Okay. Click on July 8th on the calendar and you'll get to this. And this is from...
This is an interesting article. A lot of engineering stuff in it, but, but it's interesting.
It's an interesting article. This is from a publication called Interesting Engineering. France has announced plans to ban all petrol and diesel vehicles by 2040 following...
I'm supposed to say that.
Huh?
I'm supposed to say that.
Didn't you already say it? I thought you did.
Maybe I did, yeah.
Yeah. Following India's push to switch to entirely electric vehicles, the country's environment minister revealed the plan as part of a national goal to be carbon neutral by 2050. The French Prime Minister wants France to be the European leader in clean energy. And you know, Tom, there's a lot of money to be made here. I mean, people who want to invest in capitalist enterprises can make a lot of money here. and how they can.
Got some inertia we got to overcome.
Well, you've got people who have ingratiated themselves to conservatives who say, yeah, these people are the people they're good people. They back us. They're good for us. They've given us money. They've put people who support us into office, and in fact, they also make money on fossil fuels. And
well, yeah.
if they don't make the money, they don't make the money. And so they're...
Can you say stranded assets?
Yeah, and they're pulling the strings to get the politicians to back them.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's bad for America. It's going to make America small. It's already doing it. It's destroying American leadership. Man, it's infuriating.
It's one interesting thing about this Paris plan, it includes details about the way lower income citizens could access rebates to be able to afford this expensive technology.
Well,
so they're trying to cross the...
They're trying to do it, but the thing is, the technology isn't expensive.
Well, it is if you're not making a lot of money.
That's right. One thing that we should bear in mind here is if you look at an electric car and you look at a gasoline-powered car, the electric car is exquisitely simple compared to the gas-powered car.
That is for sure.
It means, you know, I talked to Jason Cooper about his Tesla. I said, "What kind of maintenance do you have?" He said, "Well,
he has to empty the ashtray every once in a while."
He doesn't have an ashtray." He said, "I got to replace the windshield wipers." Okay. Really? I mean, what are we doing? We're spending money on burning fuel. Why? Because somebody can make money selling us fuel. That's why.
Well, at the time we started having mass ownership of vehicles, that was the most logical way to do it.
Yeah, it was.
But time marches on.
And then they
got very well entrenched.
They got well entrenched, and the first thing they did was they destroyed electric vehicles, and the second thing they did was they destroyed steam-powered vehicles.
Yeah.
I had a friend once who drove a Stanley steamer.
Uh-huh.
Not while I knew him.
I don't think I've ever even seen one.
Not while I knew him, but many years before. And he said, here was a Cadillac-sized vehicle that would drive 35 miles on a gallon of number 2 fuel oil and had no mechanical issues at all, aside from replacing the windshield wipers. Okay, should we go on?
I think we should, yep.
No, you go ahead.
Massachusetts utilities issue requests for proposals, RFPs.
This is for
400 megawatts of offshore wind power.
This is a fair amount of offshore wind.
Well, 400 megawatts, that was about the size of Yankee before they updated it.
No, it was 520. It was about 80%, 75%.
Before they upgraded it?
Yeah.
It was 520?
It was 520, okay. Yeah. I think, it was 540.
But still close.
It's
in that ballpark.
This is, and even if you throw in the capacity factors, it's still half of Vermont Yankee.
Yeah.
So Massachusetts Utilities, in coordination with the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, issued a request for proposals for long-term contracts for offshore wind energy projects. The RFP issued under the Energy Diversity Act calls for bidders to offer from 400 megawatts to about 800 megawatts. Okay, there you're up to the size of Vermont Yankee as it was bigger. Yep. Of offshore wind capacity. So you're right, Tom, and I was wrong.
The Act actually requires up to 1,600 megawatts longer term.
Right. And so there's more requests.
Coming.
There's more coming.
There's more coming.
And this stuff very likely will be far enough out to sea that nobody's going to be able to see it from land.
I think that's a given, because they know they're going to have problems if you can see it.
Well, they shouldn't. I mean,
doesn't one of the Koch brothers have a place on the Cape?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I know a couple of people. I'm not going to comment. Too mean.
Okay, well, we got an image coming up.
We do.
So let's
and
take
this
a look
is
at
from North America Wind Power. And there it is. There's the image. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah, it is. Minnesota regulators greenlight Xcel's huge wind expansion.
The Minnesota Public Utilities Commission approved Xcel Energy's plan for a huge wind energy expansion in the upper Midwest. 7 wind farms are planned for Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and the plan is for them to be operational by the end of 2020. The project's combined capacity will be is over 1,500 megawatts.
Significant.
Significant.
Definitely
yes.
significant.
Yeah. And, you know, this is just one of many things that's going on. And the thing is, this is going to be it's going to be in place and operating 3 years from now. Do that with a nuclear plant.
Not possible.
No.
I mean, even under the best conditions, it's not possible.
Well, it may be that with these reactors that they're talking about, the small modular reactors, they could set those things up faster. But I doubt it, because they're going to...
We're talking about them, but we really haven't seen any.
We haven't seen any. There hasn't been any of them turned on.
Yeah.
The technology is similar to the technology that exists already in a number of places.
It's just a smaller version of it.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, if you think about a nuclear aircraft carrier, it's got 2 reactors on it, typically of about that size. Yeah. So that's not unachievable, but the problems of building those things on land, you know, in somebody's backyard. Sorry, you know, if you say I'm going to build a wind farm with 3 turbines on Mount Wantastica across the river from Brattleboro, you're going to have a lot of people local complaining about it. If you say, I'm going to build a nuclear power plant 3 miles south of Brattleboro, you're going to have people from all over New England coming to town to complain about it. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. We're hitting Sunday, July 9th now.
We are, and we've got a piece here from Gizmodo.
U.S. tangles with the world over climate change at G20.
Negotiations over the wording of the final communique. That's a word in French that I can say. From the G20 meeting carried on late into Saturday morning. The sticking point? Disagreements over the U.S. preferred phrasing of the group's position on climate change and renewable energy. Bafflingly, the U.S. wanted to state that it will help other nations with access to fossil fuels.
That's what it says.
How do you sell somebody something if he doesn't want to buy it?
With a gun?
Yeah, right. You know, I have got junk. I will sell you. Actually, there are places in the world where you can sell junk. I'm talking about stuff that would normally go to the landfill.
Yeah.
In Sweden, they buy it. They import it from other countries.
Yeah.
So they can
melt it down again and use it over.
What can I say? You know, there's a lot of value. Did you go to that thing at the wastewater treatment plant?
No, I didn't.
You know, again, we've got the amount. All right. I wrote an article for Clean Technica, and there will be an article similar to it coming up in Green Energy Times for the next issue, which will be in August. And it deals with alternatives to fossil fuels. And what I'm maintaining is we don't need fossil fuels for anything. And that includes making cement, flying jet aircraft. We don't need them for anything. No purpose.
No longer.
No longer. And one of the things that I did researching that was I finally found an estimate from the U.S. government, and it was from the National Renewable Energy Lab, of the amount of gas, natural gas, we could be generating if we just got really aggressive about dealing with our waste.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
40%. We could reduce the amount of natural gas we're taking out of the ground by 40%. And what are we doing? We're pulling it out of the ground, polluting the air, and then the waste is turning into methane, which is polluting the air. I mean, this is... And of course, the
two wrongs don't make it right.
No, and one of the things that's really beautiful about this is you have to deal with the waste anyway. It costs a lot of money to do it. And you know,
we've talked about that. I mean, there are places where you're just about to mention.
My son,
where they're making money.
Yeah, installed the centrifuges at the waste treatment plant in Kenosha, and he said it used to be that plant cost, I don't know how much money, probably millions of dollars to run every year, and now it's running at a profit.
And it should be.
And it should be.
Absolutely.
So what is the matter with people? Well, we're being told by people who will not make money on it anymore that we should.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not privately owned. It's owned by the town.
Yeah. If you hear that climate change is not happening, ask about why a person would say that.
Yep.
And it usually goes to one of two things. One is greed and the other is ignorance. I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I'm not sorry to offend people who think that. What kind of person am I? Anyway.
We got another image coming up.
We have an image. This one, I pick up these images from the articles they come from, and I don't know, I know why this image was used, but it's not closely related. This is from Clean Technica. Isn't that a nice image?
It is. It's just
that is
lovely,
Prague.
Lovely little town. What town? Is that Stockholm?
Prague.
Oh, that's Prague.
Yeah.
Okay. I should.
Or
know
if,
that.
as you say in amphibianese, Prague.
Climate change is the driver behind the June 2017 heat wave in Europe, which was a significant heat wave.
It was, yes. New
We
analysis.
didn't hear much about it over here.
No, well, I mean, why would we talk in the United States about heat waves in Europe? New analysis has been published by researchers involved in Climate Central's World Weather Attribution Program and partners, whatever that means. It concluded that climate warming from anthropogenic greenhouse gases increased the intensity and frequency of extreme heat in the June 2017 heat wave in Europe by as much as a factor of 10.
That is frightening.
It's frightening. Well, it's not.
It covered virtually all of Western and Southwestern Europe.
Yep.
From Portugal and Spain up to the Netherlands.
And was this the heat wave that produced those fires in Portugal? A lot of people died.
It must have been.
A lot of people died.
Because this was very abnormally hot for Europe.
Yep. Yep. I when I was very young, I had a girlfriend who was English. And she told me, when it hits 80 degrees in the UK, everybody goes on strike.
I can believe that.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the way it is anymore. Okay, move on.
Have we read that one?
By a factor of 10.
Factor of 10, yeah.
We are going to the WatertownDailyTimes.com.
Okay. Lobbyist pressure, stifling rooftop solar. This is a significant item too.
This is infuriating. In the last 6 years, U.S. rooftop solar panel installations have grown explosively, as much as 900% in one estimate. But that growth is projected to be reversed, with a decline in new installations of 2% according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance. This is due to well-funded lobbying campaigns in state capitals. And who do you suppose is behind that?
Well, we know ALEC has something to do with it.
Yeah, which is funded by?
The Koch brothers.
Yeah, all of this stuff. When I really started looking at the financing behind all of these organizations, and they include organizations that are dependent on the Heritage Foundation, the Koch brothers, and so forth, but also the John Birch Society, and all of these things were started by people who were or whose fathers were in the Soviet Union in the 1920s. This is an interesting interesting conspiracy theory. And in the 1920s, the way the Soviet Union ran was it had a whole bunch of big committees, which are called Soviets. Yeah. And it had regional committees. Now, you look at these
sort of like Congresses.
Sort of like the state policy networks, local state committees, and the ALEC local state committees. And really, I thought to myself, this looks like Stalinism, except that you've changed the names. Instead of making everything the people's locomotive or whatever, you say, well, the people elected this Congress that we told you to elect and had spent so much money on advertising. And it all comes down to one thing, which is you want 5 people, this tiny oligarchy, whatever it is, to run the country. And you know what we've got in this country now? New word for a lot of people. It's called a caucustocracy.
I haven't heard that word.
It means government by incompetent and corrupt people.
Okay.
And it was used by people on the right talking about Obama and his administration.
Yeah.
I got news for you. This administration that we've got in Washington now makes Obama and his people look like paradigms of excellence.
But basically what they're saying is we can't have a government running everything when the corporations can do a better job.
Yeah.
Which hasn't been proven.
We know the corporations do a worse job some of the time.
Well, one thing for sure, the government's not making a profit on this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, government incompetence, though, is not anywhere worse than the incompetence of,
corporations can be incompetent.
They
My
can.
God.
I did a little study on express trains. You remember the express trains that were around when we were kids?
Yeah.
They had top speeds, that they normally maintained of about 65, 68 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They had stopping distances that were well over a mile.
Yeah.
The engineer on a train could be looking down the track, and if he sees something, it's too late.
Yeah, basically.
So what they did was they put up signal system.
Yeah.
And if he came to a signal, that meant that somebody down the track was telling him it's safe to proceed.
Yeah.
Without that signal, he couldn't count on that.
Yeah.
And things didn't work as well as they should have. The signal system came out in the 1880s. But by 1900, it was clear that people forgot to throw the switch. The telegraph system failed. Maybe the entire electric system failed in a storm. There were a lot of reasons why the signal system would fail. And if the trains went down the track without a signal, they were really risking things. And in an express train, that meant all those passengers,
they're at severe risk.
They were at severe risk. And they, if you hit something, a lot of them could get killed. So, in 1913, they started putting radios on the trains. And this is really cool because the passengers could get news updated as they were going down the track. But it also meant that even if the signals were failing, they could be alerted by radio.
Yep.
Okay? So, in 1957, more than 40 years after this, an express train going down the track was said in a publication to have been stopped, sitting there for an hour, and there was a railroad officer, a person on the board on the train, and the officer said, "We've got to keep our schedule going, move it down the track," putting at risk all the people on the train. And that person who did that, who I think belonged in jail for gross incompetence and neglect of human life, is extolled as a paradigm of corporate leadership by the right. Her name was Dagny Taggart.
Okay.
And the reason why that happened was because Ayn Rand, who wrote the book, was incompetent. She didn't do her homework. She didn't look up what it would mean to run an express train down a track full of passengers against a signal.
Yeah.
So I got 20 pages into Atlas Shrugged, and that was the end of that. I just couldn't stand it. I'm sorry. I don't want to read anything that was written by a person as grossly incompetent as Ayn Rand. I'm sorry, spouting.
Well,
should we get out of there?
History records that late in life she was on welfare.
Yeah, I know. Okay, we are up to the Keene Sentinel still on Sunday. We should be way ahead of this by now.
Wait a second. Did we do the Watertown Times?
I believe we did. Did we?
Yeah, lobbyist pressure stifling. We didn't talk much about it.
That was what I was spouting over.
Yeah.
Keene Sentinel, southwestern New Hampshire.
Yep, this is a very interesting article.
It is indeed,
It's a long article, but it's all local.
It's all local,
and it tells you where they're putting these things
and
up.
this is, this is Vermont, New Hampshire, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here?
4 local towns look to harness power of the sun. Others already have.
Southwestern New Hampshire is on its way to becoming a solar power mecca. Keene Chesterfield, Fitzwilliam, and Hinsdale have projects at various stages of capturing energy from the sun. The developer of Fitzwilliam and Hinsdale projects has proposed approximately 20 megawatts and up to 65 megawatt systems, respectively.
Just to put it in perspective, Ferry Road is 5 megawatts.
Yeah, that's the one in Brattleboro.
The one in Brattleboro.
And that's like the biggest one in Vermont.
It is the biggest one in Vermont,
Yeah.
yeah. So 5, and these are small systems, really.
Well,
20 megawatts, 65
I was
megawatts.
reading today in the news, and this won't be in this week's news, but it will be in next week's, about a gigawatt system which is going now, right today, going online in India.
Wow.
Gigawatt.
Wow.
1,000 megawatts, and we're talking about a huge 5 megawatt system.
I had heard about this Chesterfield one. It's an approximately
new to
90
me.
kilowatt PV installation in town, right by the town office buildings,
Yep.
which, if you know where they are, what was it, Route 61 or something like that?
I don't remember.
Well, if you're going to Keene,
Yeah.
the major intersection between Brattleboro and Keene is this road, and the town's offices are about 3 miles down that road.
Yep.
And that's where it's going to be.
Yep. All right, we've got 9 pieces to do, and we've got 14 minutes to do them.
Well, we'll have to go a little
Okay,
faster.
we should go a little
We got
faster.
a
There's an
picture
oil
here.
thing in Saudi Arabia. This is from CNBC.
Aramco CEO sees oil supply shortage as investments and discoveries drop.
This is interesting, and the thing that's most interesting about it is I happen to know, because I have inside information, that this guy learned about this from watching our show.
Oh yeah? Are you?
I'm lying.
Oh,
I'm a bad liar.
I find this picture interesting.
Yeah.
We'll leave it up there.
Okay.
It's flaring.
Yeah.
I remember, 40 years ago, flying into Saudi Arabia
And seeing
at night and seeing all across the desert flares.
Yeah.
3 years later, most of them are gone.
Interesting.
They were capturing it,
Yeah.
that gas, and selling it.
The world might be heading for an oil supply shortage following a steep drop in investments and a lack of fresh conventional discoveries. Saudi Aramco chief executive Amin Nasser told a conference in Istanbul. He said, "We should not assume that shale oil and alternative energy can be developed quickly enough to replace oil and gas." Well, certainly shale oil can't. I wonder if he isn't underestimating the speed of development of alternative energy, because it goes up fast and furious.
It would probably be, how would I say it, not taken too well at home if you were to talk about
I think that's
that.
probably true.
And this is interesting. One thing interesting here, though, one of Aramco's priorities was direct conversion of crude oil into petrochemicals. I don't know that anybody's doing that. They're refining the oil first.
Yes.
Here these guys are at least thinking of taking it right out of the ground, and instead of selling it as oil, they're turning it into petrochemicals.
That's interesting. So they would be shipping petrochemicals
Instead of oil.
instead
Yeah,
of oil,
yeah.
and of course that means a very much higher price for their products.
Much more profit.
Yeah.
They're looking for the future.
Yep. Let's move on.
France to close up to 17 nuclear power stations.
Wow.
Up to
This is
17.
From RFI, France is to close up to 17 nuclear power stations to reach the government's target of 50% nuclear power by it says 2015, it means 2025. The ecology
Yes.
minister said on Monday. He presented a climate plan, though it was short on details, reaching the commitment to reduce the amount of electricity produced in nuclear reactors from the current 75% to 50%. The French decided that since nuclear power was going to be too cheap to meter, they would want to power everything with it.
And they went ahead and built a whole bunch of these
They
guys.
put all their eggs in one basket. They wound up getting 75%. Not only did they get 75% of their electricity from nuclear, but they used electricity to heat their homes. So when they had that horrible cold wave a couple of years ago, they had to import wind power from Germany to heat their homes in France because they had nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about reliability?
Good point. We got another picture coming
We
up
do
here.
indeed.
This is a good picture. This is a good picture.
This is from news.com.au.
Everything you need to know about Tesla's batteries in South Australia,
Yep.
which we've already talked about
Yep.
this show. Yeah.
Billionaire Elon Musk has put his money where his mouth is and promised to solve South Australia's energy issues by building the world's largest lithium-ion battery. His promise, if he fails to deliver on the battery within 100 days, it'll be free. If you want to go to this article, it's on Monday, July 10th.
Good article.
And that picture is...
That's in California.
That's in California, and I think it's the second.
I think so too.
I think it's currently the largest lithium-ion battery in the world, but it will be the second largest.
And that's 80 megawatts.
Yep, and there is a lot of information in this article that kind of gets you started on an understanding of what this is all about.
Well, let's move along. I was going to
Okay.
talk about lithium batteries, but let's move along.
Okay, our next item is from Tuesday, July 10th, and it comes from ilsr.org.
Yes. In New England, cooperative values drive solar growth. This is about co-op power.
Yeah, and
They've been here.
They have been on our
Yeah,
show.
they've been on the show.
In Massachusetts, co-op power has built up its credentials steadily over the last decade. In a significant milestone, it mounted a $4.3 million community-based fundraising campaign for a biodiesel plant set to go online early next year. It has supported hundreds of rooftop solar
I've seen that
installations.
plant. It's there already.
Yeah, and fueled the region's green job growth. Well, they've been working on this plant for quite a while.
Yeah, the plant is there.
The plant is there.
Right now, it's not running yet.
Yes, and
I mean, it's running, but it's piloted.
they have said we're going to do this within 6 months, and they've really had to push that out a couple of times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I think it might have been the question of raising funds for this.
It probably is. I think they also haven't got a collection network in place.
That may be.
Well, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, and that's an important issue.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, should we go on?
There was something I wanted to mention about this. Yeah, the fact that this is cooperatively owned falls through a little loophole in federal laws that makes it easier for them to raise funds.
Okay.
Instead of looking for large investors, they can get small investors
Right.
to get involved.
Right.
So if you're looking at this show and you're considering solar power, call up Co-op
Yeah.
Power and see what they can do for
Absolutely.
you.
They've
might
put
very
up
well
quite
be
a lot
able
of stuff.
Huh?
They've put up a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
Didn't they put up the stuff on top of the food co-op here in Brattleboro?
I think they did.
I think they did. There's some solar energy on the roof.
Yeah.
I think they did that.
We should go on. Our next item, also from Tuesday, July 11th,
Yeah,
is
we've got
from
another
VT
nice
Digger.
picture here.
VT Digger.
This is a nice little lake here.
Yep.
Look at that little.
And you know, that lake, which could work for the article we're about to talk about, actually I misplaced it, and it was supposed to go with the one for co-op power.
Was it really?
Yeah, but go ahead.
It'll work for this article too.
Yeah.
Let's move. Washington electric co-op members can save on electric vehicles. This is a very interesting
It is.
development.
This summer, members and employees of Washington Electric Co-op, a 100% renewable, 100% member-owned electric utility serving communities in north central Vermont, are eligible to receive incentives totaling $10,000 on the purchase of a new 2017 Nissan Leaf all-electric vehicle from Freedom Nissan in South Burlington.
And there are tax write-offs that they can take advantage of for up to an additional $7,000.
Wow.
So they're buying this $30,000 vehicle for
For a
18
song.
grand. Yeah,
For
almost
a
half
song.
price.
Yeah, and I've just lost my place here, but I'll find it. Okay. Oh, where am I? Where have I gone here? Man, I'm back
Clean
up
Technica?
at Prague Castle.
A couple
Yeah,
down
Clean
from that
Technica.
one.
Our next item is from Clean Technica.
Sonnen battery storage developer plans to take utilities out of business. That's an interesting. Whoa, this is heavy.
Sonnen unveiled what it calls a major assault on the traditional energy utility business model. On the model, not on the businesses. It introduced a battery offer modeled on what consumers can get from mobile phone companies. An average house consuming about 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is a lot of power, or nearly 30 kilowatt hours a day, which is a lot of power, can cut its annual bill of about around 3,400 Australian dollars, which will tell you something about where this is happening, to about 480 Australian dollars a year.
That's an 85% reduction.
Yeah, and this is because of batteries and...
Well, it's pretty clever marketing on their part.
Yep.
They're selling batteries.
Yep.
They're not selling solar.
Yep.
And if you already have solar on their roof,
yep,
they'll make you a deal you can't
refuse. That's right. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, July 12th.
Quick takeaway here.
Oh, yes.
They're talking to the guy who's behind this, Sun and Power.
Yep.
Would this kill a traditional energy utility business model? I asked him during the presentation. That's the idea, he said.
Okay, this article on
coming right up.
Wednesday, July 12th.
This is also an interesting one. Let's get the picture up here.
Is from Clean Technica.
Well, what you're looking at there is a booth in a grocery store where they're growing fresh produce.
And it says on the top there, it's hard to read, but it says Kräutergarten, which means herb garden. They've got an herb garden right in the store.
Well, this is the future.
Yeah.
You know, really it is.
Okay.
Berlin's startup Infarm aims to put tiny vertical farms in grocery stores. I can see it happening.
Oh, yeah,
really
absolutely. It could happen in the co-op here in Brattleboro. The future of fresh local produce could include distributed farming, with more foods being grown in smaller systems right near, and this point of sale. They
call it zero-mile produce.
Yeah. I mean, instead of everything being shipped in from larger growing operations in Chile and Israel, you name it, now Infarm, a Berlin startup, is aiming to put tiny vertical farms into the grocery stores themselves.
Well, you can look at the color of the lights. It's all calculated.
Sorry.
It's all calculated.
Yep.
It's all LEDs.
Yep.
And it probably shifts during the day.
Yep.
Day and night with different needs by the plant. It's very clever, and it's going to take off. It will.
Got to move on, Tom.
We're almost done.
We're almost done, and we've got an item from
2 items.
Alt Energy Mag, and we've gone to the. Could you put up us there for, because that picture comes next.
Vision, V-I-Z-N, Vision Energy Systems enables 24/7 solar nights at the lowest ever published cost.
They pronounce it Vision.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've talked to these guys. They're good to talk to.
I'll take your word for it.
Vision Energy Systems, Inc. is integrating its zinc iron flow battery storage system for a record low price of 4 cents per kilowatt hour. A Vision 30 megawatt 4-hour system added to a 100 megawatt solar plant can generate a 7% internal rate of return with 4 cents per kilowatt hour purchase agreement, 20% below the lowest published values.
This is the future.
Solar plus battery is cheaper than combined cycle natural gas, which is the cheapest fossil fuels.
So economics are going to win.
Now, admittedly, this is not in Vermont. This is probably in Tucson, but nevertheless, it'll get here. I mean, I've seen pictures of solar installations that have gone in north of the Arctic Circle. Go figure.
Well, in the course of a year, they get the same number of hours of sun.
There it is.
In north of the Arctic Circle, it's all in the summertime. There's none of it in the winter. But
right. Our last item, which does use that picture, is from Triple Pundit.
Let's get the picture up.
Let's get that picture up. And this is one of the most interesting articles I have read this week. And it's about our friend.
Yep.
Who I've never met, but our friend, Mary Powell. Go ahead.
We ought to get her on the show sometime.
We should try to, yes.
Green Mountain Power sees opportunity in renewables. By the way, is that the one that we visited in Rutland?
I don't know. I didn't visit it, but it's possible it is. That's a Green Mountain.
Come along up
I didn't
there,
come along. That is a Green Mountain Power installation. I just don't know.
Well, they may have more than one, but
yeah. Green Mountain Power can seem more like a disruptive high-tech startup than Vermont's largest electric utility. It has emerged as a leading national innovator in renewable energy, demonstrating how electricity can be generated, stored, and distributed in ways that are cheaper, cleaner, and more resilient to interruptions. And they are changing the fundamentals of how they do business. That's the underlying thing.
They're on the leading edge.
They're on the leading edge. I will strongly recommend that anybody who is worried about the future of our society go to this article. It's on July 12th at geoharvey.com.
It's a good article. It's more about management.
It's
than
about
it is
management,
about
but
electrons.
what they're saying is, let's ditch the idea of competitive greed and go to something where everybody benefits. Anyway, we have to go. I'm sorry to say. I'd love to go on about this particular article particularly, but so we'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen.
Folks.
Bye-bye.